Okay. 2 o'clock, we ready to roll?
Sounds great.
All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to this session on work-life balance, which is something that sounds as good as it's hard to achieve, I think sometimes. We have a great panel of speakers today, and we're going to start with some introductions. So why don't we go from there? I'll start just so you know who I am. I'm Brett Dalton. I'm the Director of Social Media Marketing at Pittsburgh State University.
Jeff,
Yes. Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'm Jeff Burns, and I've been in IT for about 27 years now. Seems like time flies when you're having fun. I've got 2 kids that are 18 and 14, and one a recent high school grad getting ready to go to college, and the other one excited about going to high school next year. So, bit busy time in our household right now, definitely. And I've worked both in higher ed and the private sector in my career.
John?
All right.
And yeah, my name is John Kiefler. I have a couple of hats that I wear. I, until very recently, was an instructor of computer information systems at PSU full-time. I'm an adjunct now. I'm also the director of technology at a company that is located down the street from PSU called Limelight Marketing. And I'm also a Pluralsight author. So I author content for online training. And I have 3 kids. They're all girls, 7, 5, and 3. So my hands are pretty full with that. I'm outmatched at home. And yeah, I've been working in technology. Started out as a programmer at Pittsburgh State, actually. Went to school there as well. Been working in technology for over a decade now, and up until my role here at Limelight Marketing. So excited to talk to you all today.
Thanks, John. Amanda, you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I think you're muted. Maybe.
Or we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, my name is Amanda. I am the IT security officer here at Pitt State. I've been at Pitt State for, it'll be 20 years in July. I've been in ITS my whole time here, so been in different roles. I have 2 boys, one who is also a recent graduate and is planning on attending Pitt State in the fall, so that's fun and exciting. And then I have another son that is finishing up his sophomore year. So keeping busy chasing those 2 around these past their entire lives, let's be real.
And I'm Angela Neria. I'm the Chief Information Officer here at Pittsburgh State. I've been here for 11 years, just had my 11th anniversary in April. And I worked in K-12. I was also the CIO for a large Missouri school district for 11 years. And before that, I worked in IT in the private sector. I've been out of college for about 30 years. So that kind of gives you an idea of how long I've been in the world of IT. My husband and I have 3 kids. We have one that just graduated from Pitt State. And he has his first job nailed down, and he's moving to Spain for that job. We have a daughter that's a senior in high school. She's graduating Friday, and she will be attending Pitt State in the fall also. This summer, she's going to be working in Zion National Park all summer. And then we have a daughter that's a freshman that will soon to be a sophomore. So just to kind of give you an idea about work-life balance for me, my kids are older than what John is dealing with. I remember those days. And my husband is a teacher and an athletic director at the school that they attend. So that is like super, super helpful in the whole work-life balance thing. So that kind of gives you an idea of hopefully all of our backgrounds, and hopefully some of you can relate to the kinds of work-life balance scenarios, challenges, and opportunities that we're going to talk about today in our specific worlds. We do have a quick survey. I'll put this link in the chat, and then I'll take down this PowerPoint so we can just visit. If you wouldn't mind taking it, just to get an idea of where you guys stand with work-life balance and how you feel about it, that would be really helpful to us. So I'll put that link in the chat if you guys would take it really quick, and we'll get to moving on the panel. Thanks. I'll turn it over to you, Brett.
Okay, well, Angela, first, your kids are these like super kids? Like, what do you feed them? How do they, what do they?
They're wild and adventurous, much more than myself. I don't know how this happened.
Well, that's awesome. I tell you what, Angela, we're going to start or keep with you for a second on our first question. Is that she mentioned, the work-life balance, and this is something we're all trying to figure out, and that's why we're talking today. So, first question is, what does that mean to you when the phrase work-life balance?
I think for me, and I don't know how other people feel about it, I don't know if it's ever completely balanced, like 50-50. I think that's what, when I was young, I really strived for when I was young in my career, and we started having kids, but I don't think it might be a reality for some people. I don't think it's 50-50 all the time. Like I'm perfectly in sync all the time. Right now and the reason I told you those things about my kids and my family and my husband being the athletic director, he's pretty much gone right now this time of year with, the end of season sports and districts and sectionals and all those kind of things. And then the 2 kids graduating and moving. Definitely my personal life is a huge focus right now, so I'm just really swimming at work and trying to keep up with things. But I know that that's going to teeter totter back when they move. And so to me, I think it's not always being in balance, but it's being able to find peace, being able to sleep at night, being able to do regular things that I think keep me sane, taking my daily walk, those kinds of things.
Sure. And John, it's interesting, you talked about the age of your children, you're kind of on the other side of it. But also along with your role at Limelight and some of the other things you're involved in, you kind of at one point were a business owner, a founder, you started a company. So just talk about your path and how you've been able to manage the creation of a company and then the merger with another and raising 3 young girls. How have you found that balance?
Yeah, it's been a lot. So as Brett mentioned, before I was at Limelight, when I left PSU, my main role at PSU, I started a software development company, and it was just recently acquired. So I've gone through a lot there in the past few years. For me, a lot of it is I am very busy, but I have chosen to be busy. Like this is a conscientious decision. I'm not overwhelmed because of things outside of my control. I'm able to plot this course myself and do it in such a way that I can make sure I have time for my girls and I'm present at home and stuff like that, which is super important at this age. I'm actually home every day at 5 or 5:30 right now, and I spend every evening with the family pretty much. That wasn't always the case, but one thing I've learned over time, having done some of the things I've done, is how important that is, because I took it for granted previously. So kind of the long way around to answer your question, Brett, of to me, balance is for myself personally, making the choices myself, not having them made for me, by work or by things outside of my control, being in control of what I do. And even though I'm busy because I want to be, and I can schedule it in a way that I am comfortable with.
Sure. Amanda, what about you? How would you define work-life balance?
Me is being able just to kind of maintain life, maintain the flow of things. Like I said, I've got 2 teenage boys right now. They're close in age. And so, we've been chasing them since they were probably 5. We're the super parents who wanted our kids involved in all the Pee-wee sports when they were little. And so we were those people that started doing those things as pretty much as soon as they could, walk and talk. But it's also being able to, as I've gone through school, being able to go to the classroom parties and being able to help with field trips and being able to watch them play various sports and activities and those sorts of things. And fully appreciate the fact that, Pitt State is a great place to work, but specifically ITS. It's, they're very understanding, or, Angela is, because she's going through it also, but, our department and our department leads are very understanding of our lives and really, and, give us those opportunities to take off and, you know, spend those times and with our kids and being able to have those just normal parent activities that, you know, I'm very appreciative of.
Sure. Yeah, and Jeff, I want you to chime in, but first, I think I want to say what's interesting about this conversation is I think it feels like what we're always talking about is making sure that we find enough life outside of work. We make the time for non-work life, because not only can it's work often busy and consuming, but it's also something hopefully you're able to enjoy. You love it, you know, so it's not necessarily, you know, something you want to put down, but you know you have to once in a while. So Jeff, I kind of wanted you to chime in on that and what you think about the whole topic.
Yeah, work-life balance for me, it's kind of evolved over time, actually. When I was younger, straight out of college, didn't have kids. My wife was gone a lot one direction, and I was gone a lot in my job, and it seemed like we crossed at different times, which gave me an appreciation for you know, trying to really evaluate that early on, and decide what is it that I want. And I've always been the type of person where, you know, my job doesn't really define me. I've never been driven in that way. I've really wanted to do something, as you just mentioned, that I enjoy doing, that I'm good at. I like to solve problems, things like that. And the thing is that when you're a problem solver, sometimes you'll get a hold of problems that you just can't let go of, and that's a difficult thing in balancing your work and life as you move through life, basically.
Sure. Yeah, and I suppose it's kind of similar to anything you're passionate about or enjoy. I mean, you can't let yourself be consumed by it to the detriment of everything else in your life. So, and work is such a big factor in all of our lives that it's an interesting struggle, especially these days, where because of our devices, you never are away from work. You know, being away from campus or the office doesn't mean you're away from work. So, and then you add on 2020 and the pandemic and all the challenges it brought. So let's talk about that for a second. How did working through the pandemic and all the changes change what work-life balance means, and how did you manage it? Amanda, let's start with you.
I think initially it was kind of harder to turn off work. I mean, I think we were all in the same boat. We all got sent home at the same time. And so I think we were really scrambling to kind of figure out what this meant for not only just our department, for the entire campus. And so I think that was, you know, in the very beginning, I would definitely say it was a lot harder to kind of turn that off. You know, we were definitely getting, you know, phone calls after hours on, you know, on the weekends, trying to problem solve things and just kind of work through those things. But I feel now we have, or at least I have, kind of reached a kind of gotten into a groove of things, of, you know, and how to manage that. And so, I mean, and like you said, we're not away from our technology, you know, specifically us IT people, you know, more than likely we've got our phones or whatever device, you know, that we have. And so it's always there at our fingertips. And so sometimes you really do have to make the conscious effort of turning it off, putting it away, and just kind of, you know, being able to be in the moment with, you know, with real people, and not always, you know, constantly checking your email and doing those sorts of things. And it's hard. It takes practice, but I think we're getting there.
And Angela, this is an interesting topic for you, particularly in your team, because once we had to go remote last spring, we all sort of looked at ITS and said, okay, what do we do? How do we do all this? So talk about what challenges it brought for you and your team, and then how did that affect your work-life balance?
It was, and I know everyone that's on here felt that way. There was just so much to do. And just to be clear, you know, Brett works in marketing and communications, and so he manages social media. So he had to do all those things too. He was, you know, desperately communicating the right kinds of messages to our constituents. For us, I think we had all these tools in place, and I think most IT shops and higher ed did. We didn't go out and have to buy new tools. We had tools in place. The training was in place. We have an amazing Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology, and we do a lot of training in our department, and it was in place, and people knew those tools were there. We just had to find a way to put them in a everything they needed to work and learn from home in a central location, not just links to those tools. I mean, we have a beautiful portal that has links to those tools, but also all of the videos and PDFs on training for those tools to jog their memory. So the first thing we really had to do was focus on that and let them know that we're here for you. We have everything for you at your fingertips. And so we worked really, really hard on that. And I will tell you, we've had a telework policy in place at Pitt State for several years. And I've always thought, I don't want it. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to work for our team. Our team is so collaborative. We are not one of those groups that you walk through our shop and it's quiet and all the doors are closed. We are just not that way. Our IT group is very collaborative. We're in rooms together working. We're talking back and forth between offices. I did not think work from home would work for us. And it did. Our productivity levels, we use Team Dynamics for our ticketing and our project management system. Our productivity levels were up. They are up in every single area, and not by a little, by a lot. And that's kind of scary in other ways because I worried about people working too much. So then we had to be really cautious about give your eyeballs a break, stand up, move around. If it's not an emergency, don't do it. You have to give yourself a break. So it was a learn, we were learning on the fly with everybody else that hadn't worked from home before. And I actually have some good friends that are IT folks that work from home and have for years. And I called on them and asked them, how do you guys make it work? We were hiring people that had never set foot on our campus and we're working from home. So I know other people have done that before, but we hadn't. So it was interesting, but we navigated it like other people did, and we found a good balance. And I think the most important thing for us was that our leader, my boss, President Scott, was genuinely thoughtful and careful about everyone that worked on campus not overdoing it. We needed to be there for our students, but we also needed to be there for our families. It was scary. And I think that message trickled down across campus, and it really helped our campus. And it's just a part of our culture, I think, a thoughtful culture. But that was really helpful to have a boss that felt that way.
Well, and Angela, picking up on that too, is now we're at a time when we're sort of coming out of the pandemic, it seems, and deciding, well, now what? What do we do? Do we just go back to the way it was before? Or do you look at some success you had and say, hey, we can keep working remote if you want? Or how are you seeing this, especially as a leader of a department?
Yeah, we did see success in that, and we are going to continue working remotely for those that are interested in doing so. We put a system in place. We're very strategic about, if one sysadmin is working from home this week, another sysadmin needs to be on campus. That's kind of the strategic piece we have put in place. But now we're also looking at what positions could work from home full time, almost full time. I mean, we're still going to have team meetings and those kinds of things. And so we're looking at that. So definitely my mind has been completely changed because like I said, I was not a fan of the telework piece. I was just like, ooh, I don't know. We just have this great culture in our department and our campus has such an amazing culture. I was just so scared we would lose it, but we haven't. And I would say it's probably even been more enriched because we were all a little vulnerable, including me, including Dr. Scott. I mean, we were all vulnerable. We were in a place we'd never been before, and it kind of showed a human side that I think we don't always show. So yeah, it's changing. It will change our lives from now on in terms of work face-to-face and work from home.
And John, you work at Limelight, where I know you guys have some remote workers, and whether they're full-time or sometimes they work remote. What is your take on this topic, and how does Limelight work?
Well, it's interesting because there were kind of two separate perspectives that I ended up with. Because right now at Limelight, yeah, we have about a third of our team that's always been remote. We have team members all over the country, so there is already a remote work culture, and it's a fantastic culture. We're on Zoom half the day anyway, so it was no big deal. And so that piece of it really hasn't been anything at all here. Now, when the pandemic first hit, I still owned my company, Dev Squared. I was also a full-time instructor at Pitt State, and I got killed at that time because I had to switch everything to online in terms of my teaching. I had to make all these decisions for my team here, who was all in person, and all that fell on me. I had, pretty much had to make all of the decisions for the team, which was pretty stressful. And then also, I absolutely hate working from home. So putting those three things together, it was a very tough time for me personally. And it took some adjustment for sure. But now, but the remote part and remote team members was never really an issue. It's more just, adjusting and having to deal with the change and having to deal with kind of the weight of some decision making, which I know Angela and Jeff and Amanda, you all understand, like people are impacted by every decision that you make if you're in authority here in one way or another. And everybody has a different opinion as well as to how things should go. And so just all of that in the mix, along with everything else going on personally, made it really tough. Now we're all pretty well adjusted and we already have this great remote work culture at Limelight. So, it's kind of cruise control at this point. But when things started, it was a lot more difficult.
Why do you dislike working from home?
I've always had a hard time putting my finger on it. When I first started my company, I worked from home. We didn't have an office and it was fine for a while, but I got to the point where I would just roll out of bed, not put any clothes on, get in front of my computer and then like roll back away from it later. I got into this cycle I didn't like. And I also had a harder time separating that from the family who was right in the next room. I want to go away for a while, do my work, come back, be with the family and focus on one thing or the other. I personally need that separation. So for me, that was it. Now, a lot of my team members love working from home and totally prefer this. So I feel like I'm a little bit different than some of them. But yeah, for me personally, it was tough.
Jeff, how do I'm sure this happened to you during this past year. How do you know when things are getting out of balance? How can you tell that, wow, either I'm working way too much or I need a break, or maybe I'm going to have to tell the family, hey, I got to put some few more hours in today. How do you tell that you're off balance and what do you do to get back on?
Yeah, that's a good question. They're just, sometimes it's things that are just small things at first, and then it starts to kind of snowball on you a little bit. I think early on, whenever we were first working remote, you'd realize that your meetings were scheduled back to back to back, and all of a sudden you get up at 1 p.m. maybe, or at 12:30 and go, well, I haven't been out of my chair away from my screen since I got up this morning, basically. And then all of a sudden you turn around and it's supper time. And so it's a much different dynamic, is what I found in terms of, here at work, like Angela said, we were used to collaborating a lot in conference rooms or from this meeting to that meeting. And there was at least travel time, and you get up and run down the hall, do that sort of stuff. You might see people to visit with. Well, teams, we never missed a beat for the collaborative side of things, but we would get lost in those back-to-back sessions. And then sometimes that would bleed over into the evening, as other people have mentioned. And pretty soon you realize, oh, it's 6-7 o'clock at night. I guess it's time to quit for the day. And so that type of thing definitely happened early on, especially when things were busy. Luckily, my team was great in terms of we went from that conference room collaboration to the Teams collaboration almost as a natural fit, almost to our detriment because of those things that started to get out of balance. But with other people in the household, you kind of start to realize on their cues too, whenever things start to get a little bit crazy and out of balance as well. And so you kind of cue off of that and you kind of bring things back. Some of the other things we learned is that, even though we could schedule back to back to back because we're not getting up out of a chair, we really ought to schedule that as if we need travel time between meetings, just like we did at work. And so instead of scheduling an hour meeting, schedule that for 50 minutes, do some things like that. Kind of helps you come back into perspective a little bit.
Amanda, do you have some triggers? Do you have some things that make you aware that, wow, I need to step away from this computer for a minute?
I think it's just like, what we've all kind of touched on already is that it's so, the technology is so readily available at our fingertips. You really have to make that conscious effort of, okay, I'm giving myself a deadline, at 10 o'clock, I need to get up and walk around, or I need to schedule an hour for myself to, to do some things, just for me, where I'm not in meetings all day, and being able to turn it off at the end of the day. It's like, I think we all are getting emails and messages or texts on our phone, on the weekends and after hours, but being able to say, okay, if it's not an emergency, it can wait until tomorrow, or it can wait until the weekend, just because you really do need to have that, to have some separation and to have some normalcy in your life too. And so, you don't want, you can't constantly just be work. You really have to find that balance for yourself.
And Angela, you mentioned earlier that I run social media for the university, and about the time we were supposed to have spring break, that is when we learned that students were burnt out because they would tweet at us and give us a lot of grief that they're so burnt out and need spring break, and we took it away from them. And I thought it was interesting that, in a way, I give them credit for being so honest and bold and just in our face about it. But of course, sometimes it can be slightly frustrating. But and I say all that to ask you, can you tell when members of your team are burnt out, when they need a break? Do you step in as a leader and say, hey, I think you might be out of balance and you might need a break, or even for yourself?
Yeah, sometimes I can, not with everyone. Some are better at hiding it than others, and some are just better at managing it. But yeah, we've had, through this process, we have team members that have lost, family members to COVID. We've had team members that have lost family members for other reasons, or that have had family members that have been very sick and in the hospital. So we really, as a leadership team, have worked very hard to stay connected on communicating those kinds of things. It seems like there's been more of that during the pandemic, more sickness, more illness, COVID related or not, than normal. And there's a lot of research out there on that. So we have really worked hard to try and take a load off those folks. But usually I feel like when someone's overwhelmed, I know this happens with me, I find myself multitasking, and I find myself not present. And that's easy to see it's super easy to see that happening in Teams meetings, right? People have their video off, you hear them clicking on their keyboard, you ask a question, they don't respond, So those things happen. They happen pre-pandemic, they'll happen post-pandemic, but those are the moments when I usually say, hey, maybe we need to readjust. What's going on? What can I take off your plate? What can we move back? Can we move a deadline back? Because, we're IT, so we always have maintenance going on. We always have self-imposed deadlines going on in addition to other deadlines that we have for campus, right? So sometimes with those self-imposed deadlines, we have some leeway and we have some cushion. So we try and do some of those things. And I'm no different. I find myself doing those things, multitasking, and I have to tell myself, actually, that's one of my New Year's resolutions this year, was to be present in the moment, do a better job of being present. I think the pandemic taught all of us how important that is, and just being able to spend quality time with our family because we were forced to, almost, how great it is. It's good for the soul. And so I think that those are kind of the signs that I see both in myself and in team members in our department, and try and take that approach. My goal is to support the people in our department so that they can do what they need to do, both professionally and personally. There's a great book. Jeff and I have both read it. And Jeff, what's the name of that book?
The Dream Manager.
Dream Manager. Dr. Scott, President Scott, had us read this. I don't know, it's probably been, 7 or 8 years ago in a President's Council retreat. And then I ask all of our leadership team to read it. And it's got a little hokiness to it. If anyone's read it, they know what I'm talking about. It's super short. You get through it in a night, probably a couple nights, but it's about the philosophy is find out what your folks' dreams are, what their personal dreams are, and help them reach them. If their dream is to own their first house, how can I help them reach that? If I know that information, how can I help them reach that? So that's something we've really focused on. And I think with life work balance, knowing those things are really helpful. Knowing what people are working towards so that you can support them emotionally, spiritually, financially. You know, if you think, man, they're wanting to do this, and I think they'd be great for this promotion, and maybe sometimes it's not even in our department. We had that happen not too long ago. We had a great person that we didn't want to lose, but we knew this promotion was better for him in a different department. And, you know, I had to say, you got to do it, you know? So those are the kinds of things that we've tried to do. And I do think that that impacts work-life balance. John's a great example. I mean, I wanted to cry when John left. He was critical to he is critical still in so many ways, and the things that he's developed live on, but you can't begrudge someone for wanting to move on and do those kinds of things. And I think that it has impacted, you know, him and his wife, their family's grown, they have all these other things going on. And so I think knowing those things is really important to help your staff meet a work-life balance that's real, you know, that's possible.
Yeah, and something you said there made me think about something I'm really interested in surrounding this topic is how we work and also when we work. I mean, obviously there's a lot of research, and there's actually a good book I read recently that talks about how people have their peak hours. Some people are morning people, some are nighttime or afternoon workers. So, and John, I'll start with you on this. I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts on sometimes work-life balance to me is some sort of understanding with maybe your boss, let's say, for an understanding of how people work best. And, you know, it might mean, well, this team works best, like if they're not going to get here at 8, like they might be at 8:30 or 9. And so, and it's something you and I have talked about a lot, where how do we shift to a work world where it's based around production and not so much the common 8 to 5? Because I do think there's a little bit of balance to be found in working with people and how they work best.
Yeah, so I don't know if I've read the same book as you, Brett, but I have read a lot about this too. And people do have peak work times. Some people work very well in the morning, some work well in the afternoon, some work well in the evening. And when you catch them off their peak work times, they're not as productive and they're not as happy to work. And you know, my thing has always been to try and meet people where they are in terms of how they like to work and when they like to work. So, you know, I've evolved some as a manager. I used to be pretty anal retentive about show up on time, you know, stuff like that. I don't care anymore because I know my people will get stuff done because they're happy, because, you know, they know they're valued, because they get to work in a way that works for them. And I can have somebody be more productive in 2 or 3 hours working on a schedule that works for them, working in their peak work time, than somebody working 12 hours if it's not what they need to do, if it's not how they function. So yeah, I think that is really important. And, you know, we obviously have constraints around the workday. Like we have a 9 to 5 for a reason. It's because it's when people are typically available. So there are other things you can do as well to just be cognizant, like, hey, if you're going to be collaborating with people, when do they like to have meetings? Maybe when they're a little bit less on in terms of productivity, and then when do they like to be head down and work and be left alone? So, you know, feeling that out with your team, I think, is really important and a good first step.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, actually, because I have a weekly one-on-one with my boss, and it's always at 8:30 on a Tuesday. And I've been toying with asking her to move it to the afternoons, but I was trying to figure out how to explain it. It's because I'm ready to go and produce and do things in the morning. In the afternoon, I can sit around for an hour and a half and talk. But when I come out of this morning meeting and it's 10 o'clock, I feel like the day's shot. I'm like, I'm exhausted already, you know. So it's a funny thing. But Amanda, what do you think? Do you have a way that works best for you in terms of how you work or when you work?
You know, I don't know that I do, to be really honest. To be really honest, I think one of the things is just, and for me being a working parent, I know that I need to get my work done during regular work hours, like a typical, we work 8 to 4:30. So I know that I need to get my work done during those hours because I know 99% of the time I've got stuff going on in the evenings. And so I think I've just become accustomed to that because, when I started working, I didn't have kids. And so I've had kids, since I've been working. And so I think I've just been kind of, I don't want to say programmed, just I've adjusted to that just regular, kind of 8 to 4:30 schedule, just because that's the way life has gone.
And Angela, be honest, how many nights in this past year do you think you waited till everyone went to bed and then you stayed up and worked?
A lot. I don't know, a lot. And I know everyone on this, everybody today joining us probably feels the same way. If you've got other family members, and we have people that work with us that are caretakers also of other family members that are ill and and have to work around those things, doctor's appointments, those kinds of things. So yeah, I think all of us deal with those kinds of obstacles, challenges, if you want to call them that. I think, again, my focus, I've done better the older I've gotten, and maybe it's because my kids are older and more self-sufficient, but my focus is being present in the moment. And that's something I really struggled with for a long time. I'm a multitasker and I like task lists and I like to check them off and know that I've done everything I said I was going to do that day. I felt like a failure if I didn't. And I've really had to change my thought process on that over the years. I used to think, driving through McDonald's was being a bad mom. I really believed that. I thought it was terrible that I would feed my kids McDonald's. And I mean, they think it's they still think it's one of the best treats they can get. Like, there's certain days when I'm on my way home and I know there's ball games and I know I might be up late after they go to bed or something like that, that I'm like, I'm ordering bamboo or I'm ordering pizza. What do you want? I just pick it up on the way to the ball game or whatever. And that's okay. I had to make myself believe that's okay, that I didn't have to have something in the crock pot every day or whatever. So yeah, I think, that helps too, because there's always, those late nights that you have and you just are too tired to do stuff. If you try and do everything, cook the meal, go to the ball games, do the work, sometimes, you have these plans to stay up late and do things and it just fails because you just are too exhausted to do it.
Yeah, and that sort of hits on, one of the things we talked about and leading up to this was, one of the topics was strategies to keep your life in balance. And so, Jeff, what are some of your strategies? Do you have these little things that maybe certain times you might stay up late, or do you go on a walk to get re-energized? How do you stay in balance?
Yeah, that sometimes is a struggle for me. It's one of those things where you have to stop and kind of figure out one of your hobbies that you like to do, whether that's going and doing stuff with family or friends or whatever the case is. I think it's different for everybody. In my first job, I could work almost 7 days a week. I could start getting phone calls at 6 a.m., maybe till 2 the next morning. It just depended on the day. I would go to work in the morning and then all of a sudden realize, hey, it's 6 o'clock at night. You know what? I didn't stop for lunch and it's supper time now. So I was really bad about that sort of thing early on, actually, I didn't really have very many good strategies. And at that time didn't have a really too much of a pull from the outside. If my wife was away working, then it's like, well, nobody's at home anyway. I'll just keep going. And so, but I think now, it's kind of like others have mentioned. I think my kids kind of grounded me somewhat in that. And it was really important to be there for them and for those activities because, gosh, they grow up so fast. And it's one of those things. So I think, one of my strategies there is just to take a step back. Work's always going to be there. If you're in IT, you could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you still would not get it all done. So it's really about that prioritization, working with your boss to make sure that, hey, we're handling the priorities that have to be done, and these other things, they can wait a little bit. And You know, I think one of the things is you've got to not be afraid to, you know, I manage a team of programmers or lead a team of programmers, and it's the type of thing, you know, recognizing that when they're out of balance, when you're out of balance, them recognizing that too, that give and take, and making sure that you have that open door policy as a supervisor, and having that open door policy in your supervisor is a huge benefit for maintaining that balance, because you kind of end up, the more communication in those directions, it's easier to see those times when you are getting out of balance, and people will speak up, and you know, it's a good way. So as far as anything specific strategy wise though, it's more about taking that time, you know, I guess kind of like Angela was saying, being present in the moment, realizing to take more of those times where you're present in the moment, and not just letting work kind of overwhelm you or run you, or, oh, I'll get this one more thing done. There's always one more thing.
So true.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, and the way you ended right there kind of makes me think, and we only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to ask each of you just to give a short statement on, as it pertains to work-life balance, what did this past year teach you, and how are you thinking about life and work moving forward? Angela, let's start with you.
I think it taught me to be more flexible. I mean, I think it taught everyone that, but I'm really rigid and a perfectionist, and it really taught me to be more flexible personally and professionally, and let things roll off a little bit easier.
Amanda?
I would agree, being flexible, being able to kind of just roll with things, and, you know, I think we've mentioned this before, but just being more present, you know, being able to unplug and take, you know, set the phones down, the screens down or whatever, and just be more present in the moment with our people.
John?
What they said, but also it's taught me to say no to more things. So I have been pretty bad at that historically, but you know, I turned down the opportunity to teach full time again. You know, I've done it for 7 years. I'll continue to do it some as an adjunct, but I'm not going to do it full time anymore. I have had a bunch of opportunities come my way to do various things, and I've been saying no to a lot more stuff because I want to focus on what's important, and like they all said, be present and have time for the things that matter. I've got plenty of time for work, but I'm going to be sure to say no more.
Cool. And Jeff, you sort of touched on it last time, but any closing thoughts on that thought?
The biggest thing that I would say, the realization that I had, is that my family and I like to take vacations where you just get away for a week or so at a time. And the pandemic really killed that for us. One of our favorite things is cruising, and they still haven't started that back up out of US ports. But that, I think, you know, that focus on those vacations away, it showed me the importance of that, because of the times I've gotten kind of overwhelmed and stressed is because there's no break from the pandemic, but lights at the end of the tunnel. So I think going to be better there. So
Cool. Wonderful. Well, everyone, thank you. That was a great conversation. I really appreciate all the thoughts, and certainly something we all need to think about more and more. And I think we just are, especially now coming out of the pandemic, and it has changed a lot of things, and many things for the better, despite the circumstances. So thank you for a great chat.
Thanks for being our moderator, Brett. You did great. We appreciate you leading us through it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. See you guys. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks.
You too.
Thank you.